What is up, guys? Clay Enjoyer here, and it's time to enjoy. And in this video, I'm making a knight and a giant sandworm. So obviously, all the sculptures I start out with clay, but this one is a tiny bit different because it is actually super tiny. It's like the size of my thumb, and for whatever reason, I decided to go making the knight first instead of the worm, because I was thinking that it's probably a better idea to get a sense of scale instead of doing the worm first, because again, I don't know what scale I'm going with, and like in all my videos that I've ever made before, I don't really plan these things, they just kind of start happening as I feel like. And considering this knight is so tiny, I think the detail does look okay, even though it is a little bit hard to film me making the details accurately because I think my hand would get in the way, but at least for the moment, this is the stuff that I have for the knight so far, and I will go back to add some more details later. Just, I need to bake it a little bit first to get the layers baked in place so then I can add stuff on top to it, because all of this clay, it's so warm and malleable because I'm just so desperately trying to not actually smoosh any details, and this definitely didn't make me angry at all, and I definitely didn't lose the helmet multiple times. But with that out of the way, and start making the worm already, which for this worm, it's gonna be bursting out of the ground in two parts. One part is going to be the main part, which is the head, and then another part where it's like a curve, like a U-shaped part of the body that's jumping out of the dirt or the mud. Again, I don't really know yet what I'm going to do for the base, but obviously I'm going to do something, and I feel like I want to give the worm an extra segment, which would make the piece more dynamic, even though all my pieces are dynamic in some extent, but I don't know, maybe that's just because I'm the creator. For the worm part, I actually want to make it look like a worm instead of like a very wrinkly sausage. So what I can do to separate that is actually make a bunch of lines that are all around the entire body in slightly different distance variations. Instead of having all the lines exactly the same distance apart, I'm going to spread them out a little bit so it looks a little bit more normal. I say this like a giant worm is normal, but in terms of the creases of the worm moving around through the sand or mud, which I will eventually add. And I just wanted to make sure all the sections are clearly defined, and some that are slightly more defined than others for some reason. This didn't really seem to have much an effect, but now that the worms are already done, I can start making some armor plating, which then again, I know for worms that doesn't seem to make any sense, but then again, you guys are thinking ground worms. I'm more thinking alien xenomorph-esque worms, which was mostly just because when I actually looked up inspiration, there was a lot of weird examples of worms. A lot of them just had armored spikes, plates, random arms like a long tongue, or just a lot of teeth. So I kind of took a couple of those and toned it down slightly, but then again, I don't know the definition of toned down in comparison to you from me. Now I can attach the rest of the plates, which I know I have attached a few already, but of course, because I'm such a genius, I clearly guessed wrong about how many plates that I would actually need, so I actually had to make a couple more off camera and add right now, because of course, YouTubers can't count, or as they say. And I just want to go into a little bit of the inspiration for this sculpture. So I've been playing a bit of Hollow Knight, and also I took a little bit of inspiration from the Dune sandworm, and I kind of meshed both those two together to create this worm, which obviously, in my opinion, isn't obvious right now, but when I get on to making the mouth, which is right now, it's going to be a tiny bit more obvious, I hope. I hope it's not just me, I swear. The teeth on the worm aren't a whole lot, they're just tiny little bits of clay that I added into the face, but for some reason I forgot to do the main clip of the big teeth, which are obvious back there, and for some reason I decided to start making the base even though I was not ready for that. So all I'm making is this section and then putting it to the side so I can show off the knight, because when I was mentioned earlier that I wanted to bake it and then add more details, these are said details that I was going to add, mostly just a few extra plates, before then starting to paint the worm in a nice poop brown. Again, I definitely didn't realize this until the editing process, but then again, I feel like I should have been a little bit more prepared, and I should have been a little bit more careful when choosing colors, but then again, I plan to make the base a sandy, muddy color instead of just thinking that I'm going to do that, so I just have to figure out some color-appropriate colors, and I believe oranges and tans are the closest thing I can get to. And I can finish painting all the highlights with that aforementioned tan, because I wanted to try and use a lighter paint over top to make it look like the worm's creases were a tiny bit more rounded instead of perfectly flat, which I don't really know if I actually accomplished that or not, but I just say that I did in my head, followed by an even darker brown on the armor sections, followed by an even lighter dry brown dusting, because I want to get some edge brushing or dry brush highlights, gosh, that's the word, because I want to give this a little bit more detail and make it less flat, because right now it looks pretty boring. But again, extra paint always solves the problem and definitely doesn't make the problem worse, which is what I did here on the edges of each plate as well, because I wanted each plate to be a little bit more defined, even though I think they're defined enough, but then again, enough isn't good enough. So I can also then move on to painting the giant teeth in that same brown mix, followed by another dry brushing to make it look similar to the plates that I just did on the rest of the body, which obviously are pretty similar. But then again, if this was canon or something, I have no idea if this would be. Probably not, but I guess it'd be canon in my own head, but then again, that also doesn't make any sense, so I can start working on the base, which is now I can actually bring it back and start ripping it up, because I want the worm to be exploding out of the ground instead of just sitting on the ground, which is kind of hard to explain, but I have to tear up the base first. And these dots that I'm making right now, they were pretty pointless, because in the glue combination slurry of things that I made, these holes were completely covered up and completely useless. Then again, I also wasn't really planning, because I was trying to smack it a bunch of times, because again, I was trying to get that texture before then gluing in the piece in the wrong place before quickly panicking and fixing the mistake, because I don't want the plates and the worm to be facing the wrong directions before then making sure that it's stable and gluing the second piece down. But before that, I actually missed painting the mouth somehow, so I have to go back and do that and then add it in. But it's not like there was a whole lot of steps that were actually skipped, even though I'm videoing them right now, just the mouth and the teeth. But then again, I still think it is an important step, because I imagine you viewers would be like, hey, when did the mouth get painted? Or you just wouldn't care. I don't know. I'm not your mom. If you watch the video, that's all I care, and I really appreciate you for it. So now, with the stuff in place, I can make that absolute disgusting slurry and goop of sand/mud all over the base, making it smooth on the top and rough like sand or mud in the bottom, before then waiting for it to dry forever, because this stuff was super sticky. Like, it was making my fingers stick together, so I had to wait, obviously, dry my hands, and go back to painting the knight, which is a lot simpler in comparison, which is just silver to start with, followed by some blue for some accents, especially on the shield, and a little bit on the shoulder plates, but it was a little bit tricky to get it on the shoulder plates because, again, they were so tiny. But I also wanted to do the belt and the sword holster. I know holster is the wrong thing, but I don't know what the thing is called. It's like a sword sheath. That's what it's called. Man, I'm having like a neuron activation mid-recording. But I can do a black wash, and now I can repaint the base in some lighter oranges and tans to make the base look more 3D and less flat and boring. Now, as one of the final steps, I can tone down all this orange mud because I think it's looking a tiny bit too radioactive and I want it to look a little bit more dusty. And I can glue the knight in place somewhat unsuccessfully, and I can paint the base black, and now it's time for the reveal. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more sandworm fighting a knight content next. Alright, see you guys in the next video. Bye.